You're listening to KGBC 96.9 FM Oakland and streaming online at www.kgbc969.org. This is the Anything Can Happen show with Kenya Asa, Kwesi Dreams, and your man, Cat Fitness. Yes. Man, this episode, first of all, we starting a whole brand new season for y'all. We're going into season two. And you know we had to bring the fire for season 2, y'all.
Absolutely.
This brother that we got in here today,
yes,
is about to change your life forever.
He
and
is.
I know this for a fact today.
But only if you're listening and taking notes, y'all.
Definitely get the notepad out today. Miss Kenya, can you give us a little bit more background on who we have in the building today?
I certainly can. Hello, ladies and gentlemen and peeps. I'm excited about this. This is a topic I'm very interested in, so I am very excited to get into this. Today, we have Mr. D.B. Bedford on the show. He's the CEO and founder of iNeverWorry Consulting, a company that specializes in emotional intelligence and trains staff and leadership on how to effectively manage their behavior and make better personal decisions to achieve positive results. Mr. Bedford is a highly coveted public speaker and well-regarded author of 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 amazing books. And the books are iNeverWorry, EI Secrets, and Black Intelligence.
Hey.
Mr. Bedford is known as one of the top experts in the field of emotional intelligence. I'm going to stop there because I don't want
you already fired up.
I'm already fired up
up.
because let me tell y'all why I'm fired up. Because when the first book about emotional intelligence came out, I don't know if I've talked about this a few times on the show, but I used to work in a bookstore. And when that book came out, it was way back in the day, and people are like, what on earth is emotional intelligence? So, Mr. Bedford, can you tell the people, first of all, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. But can you start by just explaining to people what emotional intelligence is?
I sure can. And so essentially, emotional intelligence is having the ability to really be self-aware at all times, right?
So being in the present, not thinking about the past, not the future, but like the now, the here and the now. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, that's part of it.
Okay.
But most importantly, like always being mindful of like your mood, your attitude, the energy you bring to any situation. That's the emotional part. The intelligent part is how do you manage how you react to the things that's going to happen to you inevitably throughout the day. The people that you run into, the situations you encounter, how do you react or respond to that? So emotional intelligence, emotions, how do I feel? Intelligence, what do I do with that feeling? That is pretty much the baseline of it. And somebody like myself who they call the EI guy.
The EI guy?
EI guy, because I just got one mission every day is to influence anybody who's willing to listen, to never let your emotions overpower your intelligence.
So let me ask you this, because I remember when I read the first iteration of this, one of the main things that the author talked about was the importance of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And not just the importance of self-awareness, but the importance of not just being aware of your behavior and how your emotions affect your behavior, but being responsible and being able to take a look at yourself and how you're acting in a certain situation and why that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I remember. Now, this was a very long time ago.
Don't age yourself.
It was a very long. Oh, I'm happy to age myself. Okay, when you look this good at 55, you're doing okay. Okay. So that was part of it. Was just the self-awareness.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so you're referring to probably Daniel Goleman's book. He was one of the first people to step out and lead the charge with emotional intelligence. And yes, it's really reminding folks that you are responsible for how you act, no matter how you feel.
Yes,
right.
That's very cognitive behavioral perspective from me, and that as a counselor, that was kind of the way I went after things with my it's not as relevant how you feel, it's more relevant how you behave in certain situations.
Yeah. That's especially relevant right now with everything that's happening in the world.
But within our community, we are never. I think we were talking about this off air, DB. Like that's something that you're not taught though. Like
Nope.
No. Within the household, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can unpack this from any angle, but when you think about it, like for the most part, people tend to spend more time looking out the window than they do in the mirror. Right, because it's easier for us.
What's wrong with everybody else, right?
Right, or what everybody else is doing, or what somebody said, or this or whatever, and people spend a lot of time focusing on that, which is why social media is so popular, right? Because you have an opportunity to sit and watch what everybody else is doing, and while you're doing that, you're distracted from paying attention to what you should be doing. Wow. And so when we talk about self-awareness and the importance of it, those of us that find our self in the space where we are constantly improving, right, who we are, and we are constantly being able to represent the latest version of ourselves, is because we have the ability to tap into our level of self-awareness. I'll say this and I'll pause. I believe that every single day you will find yourself in front of a mirror at some point. But most people look in the mirror, but they never make eye contact.
You mean like a literal physical mirror?
No,
I mean
the person around you.
No, I mean an actual mirror.
Oh, okay.
Next time you at the mirror, right? Look in the mirror and watch what you naturally do first. You want to see how your clothes fit. As you shave correctly, you're looking for the external piece of you. But very few people can take a moment and look directly in their own eyes. I challenge people in trainings that I do. I said, it's an exercise. If you can, I said, do it. Nobody will be around. But what's going to happen is that you're going to be a little uncomfortable. Right. And you're going to be uncomfortable because you're going to realize in that moment that you really don't look into your own eyes. You don't really look at yourself. And I challenge people to say, listen, man, if you can't look at yourself, then how you expect other people to look at you?
That's right. And it doesn't just, it's not just making sure your mascara is on, okay, or your eyeliner is on. I think he means looking right into your eyes as the window of to the soul.
And be still.
And be still.
Right? Don't run from it. Don't look away. Don't look. Just be still for a second. And when people will say, well, somebody said, like, why would you do that? I said, because you need to know who's showing up every day. So when we go back to self-awareness, a lot of problems that are created, a lot of, relationships that get strained because people don't even realize how they're showing up. That's why when you point things out to people, their blind spot, they're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Did I say that? Because you're not self-aware. You don't even realize how you're showing up every single day.
But taking a look at yourself is very hard for a lot of people based on what is going on in their own hearts and minds that maybe they don't feel comfortable with or they don't feel comfortable sharing, but also based on their childhood, their upbringing, the amount of love and affection that they got in the home. Sometimes that makes you think that you're not worthy or that you know what I mean? There's a lot of pain sometimes that people don't want to look into their own eyes or look at their own what's in their own hearts because there's too much pain and it's too painful to do.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
And you mentioned
that's why I'm here to coach to remind to make it okay.
Yeah.
Right. Give people permission to do it. Right. To make EI cool. Something that you want to be a part of. That's why I create the type of community and the way that I go about doing things. Because you're right, it is hard.
Yeah.
Because no one challenged you to do that, like you said when you were growing up. So it's time for us to do it, right? We can't keep avoiding that because people count on us. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've been living long enough. You got family. You got business partners. You got friends. People count on you, whether you realize it or not. And you need to be the best version of yourself when you show up, so that we can make this thing move forward in a positive manner. So
yeah.
But then we have. I'm sorry, Quezzy. Go ahead. I was just
okay.
I was just gonna say, it's hard when we're, and I'm not going to say we, because some of us are, some of us are not, but we're in a culture right now where sharing with your children, teaching your children how to take personal responsibility of things is really not happening in a lot of households. Oh, little Junior wouldn't do that. Let me go up to the school and yell at the teacher. Or, oh, everybody gets a trophy in T-ball. Not whether you did well, whether you won or not. Every
So everybody
team,
doesn't deserve a plaque at the end of the
team
season? Is that what you're telling me?
No. There's a winner and a loser. Sometimes you are the loser. And you got to be okay with being the loser, because if you try your best, then okay. If you didn't try your best, take a look at why you didn't try your best. But not Tom, Dick, Harry, Bob, and Jim Bob, everybody gets a plaque or a trophy. It wasn't like that when I was growing up playing basketball horribly. I was a horrible basketball player. And guess what? If we lost, we lost. No, I didn't get no trophy. Not at all.
It sounds like you're kind of upset right now about not getting no trophy.
Oh, no. You know what? I never cared, because I was having fun. I was horrendous at basketball for probably 9 years. Awful. I think I made one basket in 9 years. But guess what?
I feel a lot of tension in your voice right now.
Let me tell you why. Because I am a mother. I have a son. And I do not want my son thinking he deserves something that he didn't deserve. Or deserves something that he did not earn. Just because everybody gets a trophy. And so I think that my point is that we're raising in our communities right now, and in the American culture, that everybody's deserving. And I think what we're growing is kids and young adults who can't take responsibility for what's going on inside of themselves.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And I know, Dee, you mentioned trainings a few moments ago, right? So tell us a little bit more about your organization, iNeverWorry.
Hold on, I want him to kind of address what Kenya just said.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
Kenya, she was going
about
in.
the trophies.
Yeah, well, because Cat's got kids. Cat's got kids too.
So my initial response while I'm sitting here listening to what you're sharing is that I think that is not 100% true.
Ooh.
I don't think that everybody is like that.
Oh, not everybody. Not everybody.
Well, I was echoing what you said.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
But
I mean,
I hear you. I'm hearing you.
Just echoing what you said. But I don't think that, like, you probably literally didn't mean that.
Sure.
But that's how you shared it.
Yeah.
Which means that is the perspective of the world that you take.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think when we're talking about, I mean, there's multiple domains of emotional intelligence, but because self-awareness is the number one domain, I just want to come back to say that just think about like the passion you just had about the position.
She was fired up, DB.
Right?
She was fired
Right?
up.
And I'm not mad at that.
No,
right?
not at all.
But the reality of it is there are multiple ways to look at that. And what happens in society is that people don't understand that we are always moving with the battle of beliefs, right? Because what you believe is what you know.
Yeah.
That's the hill you're gonna die on.
That's
right.
the programming.
And
That's
so,
true.
if I was to counter, right, in a way to challenge where you felt challenged what I just said, oh, we take up all the airtime, because what you are gonna do is you're gonna be adamant of making sure I understand where you are coming from, right? Because that's what you believe. And so when we talk about, the state of like communities in general, I think it will benefit us all. And this, I'm just using an example, right? Is that whenever we express ourselves in any manner, we have to always be, I call it the OMA approach, the open-minded approach, where you do not speak or engage seeking if something is right or wrong, or good or bad. Because going back to what you said about childhood, a lot of folks have been reared, right? If something is bad or something is wrong, you're going to be disciplined, consequences, something to be taken away from you. Punished. So as you get older, if you haven't taken a look at that, when you assess that something is wrong, bad, and normally if somebody doesn't agree with us, that's what we start thinking. right? Like you somehow come
Yeah.
against me.
Oh,
So then
man.
you start engaging from that side of your energy
Or
force, right? And when we talk about smoothing this thing out and getting people to vibrate on a higher frequency, you step into every situation with that open-minded approach, even though you express yourself, but you don't take such a hard stance, because you got to be flexible and you have to be able to understand that everybody's not going to see things the same way, and it doesn't make it wrong.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
With that.
So not that
Totally.
wasn't towards you.
Yeah, no,
But
I
I don't want to use what you
Yeah.
said
That
as
was
an
deep.
example.
Yeah,
So how we can
absolutely.
lighten it up, you know what I mean? So we can engage with each other in a more
Mhm.
positive way.
Yeah, we're gonna
Yes.
take a quick pause because you got a shout out on our social media page. If you're listening to this, follow us right now at ach.show on Instagram. That's at ach.show on Instagram. You can watch us live before we have the broadcast on KGPC 96.9 FM. But you got a shout out from
no, I was gonna say, let them know that they can also join the conversation.
they
too.
enjoy the conversation.
They can join the
Oh,
conversation
y'all enjoy the
today. We got brother
conversation.
D.
Yes.
Doors open, man.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have doors open.
Come on, we in the
We
back.
have at Raise the Sunshine 123. That's at Raise the Sunshine 123. She said, "Fam, DB." She's showing you some love
That's
on
what's up.
Instagram.
Send
Raise
it
your
Yes.
right back
heart.
to you.
Yes.
Much love and respect.
So shout out to all our followers. Thank you for tuning
I
in.
love it from you.
Yes.
Please continue.
I don't even know what I was saying.
Oh, okay. I got
Gotta hit me
questions.
with another one.
I got
Right.
questions for you. So, how do you feel about the statement that emotion is energy in motion?
I love it. I think it's facts, right? From my perspective, I think that energy, right, is amongst all of us, right? And I think we all can agree from a scientific standpoint that it's not created or destroyed, right? It just stays in motion. And I think whenever you're feeling a certain kind of way, when you move, whether it's the conversation of your physical body or your thoughts, there's an emotion that shifts with it. So I would agree with the statement that emotion could be considered energy in motion.
Yeah.
So real quick, I'm gonna ask you a question about something I personally experienced that helps me with my emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And I haven't read this out of any book. It just kind of came to me one day, right? Looking at other people, right, as a reflection of yourself, and then allowing, like, if you see something that triggers you within that person, looking at the deeper root instead of pushing that issue onto them, looking inside of yourself, and it's like, why did that just trigger me? Why did what they just said make me feel a certain kind of way? And not necessarily expressing it with them, because like you said, nothing's going to happen but a back and forth of people trying to prove their own programming of why they think the way they think, instead of looking like, wow, that made me feel a certain kind of way. Like, what would you say to people that look at things in that particular light? Like, everybody's a certain reflection of themselves,
Right.
and you're having a conversation amongst yourself.
Appreciate the alley-oop. Right. So that's called projection bias. The only reason why you ever get bothered with anybody for anything is because you look at them and you be like, well, why did you say that? Or like, why would you do that? And what you are subconsciously saying to yourself, that's not what I would do. That's not what I would say. That's not how I would handle it. To your point, right? You are projecting, right? You have a bias about something. You're projecting it out to the person or the situation. And when it butts up against what I said about the battle of beliefs, because your projection is coming from what I like to call your internal software, which is a combination of your beliefs, your values, and your life experiences.
Goodness gracious.
We are all programmed with our own internal software. So whenever something butts up against something you believe, like what I was saying a minute ago, you're ready to fight for it.
Wow.
Most people haven't taken the time to update their internal software. So they're operating off old beliefs, outdated values, and hold on to past life experiences in today's time.
Good.
Man, y'all gonna get some real
That
games
is
today. I
depth.
told you.
That's what you told me to do, right? You told me we couldn't come here to play. That's what you said.
We're going to take a quick pause because we got another shout out. At ach.show on Instagram, Miss Vanita Lee Tatum, who is a future guest.
Oh, yeah.
She's
That's
going
my
to be
sis.
amazing. Okay.
That's my sis.
Yes.
What's up, Nita?
Yes. Shout out to Nita for tapping in at ACH.show.
For sure.
But that leads me to our next point, right? So you talked about training, right? Obviously you're an expert in your field. That goes without saying, right? But what do your trainings consist of? And if somebody wanted to get involved and learn more, how could they find that information?
Okay, so basically, I'm concentrated in the workforce. So most of my trainings are in the workforce, and that's where I put a lot of focus at because that's where a group of people are going to be gathered at the most and for the longest period of time.
Yeah,
8 hours a day.
Yeah, I was gonna say
More
5 days a
than
week.
that. More than that. The
Right.
more
More than
than
my
my
family.
family.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is that, right, in the workplace, you tend to hear the word, the morale is low.
That's a destiny.
Unions and grievances.
Yeah.
And my supervisor this and my supervisor that.
Sounds like when I was at work.
Right?
I
People
like
get
drama.
mad at somebody and hold grudges for years.
Years.
Right?
Yeah, to the
So-
grave. Wait.
My primary focus is to try to get people back to the space when they first started. Because people forget about that day.
Sure
Yeah.
do.
It's like I'm about
I
to
got-
get paid.
I
That day you got that call,
Yes.
right? You was like, thank God.
Yes.
I'm employable.
And then if it happened recently, you was on social media and you made a post
Post
and
on the
everybody was
Facebook.
celebrating
Hey.
and you wore your badge after
Oh, my
work
goodness.
and you slept in your uniform and all that. And, like,
I'm a big player of the month.
and then all of
You
a
really love
sudden,
your job. If
right?
you're sleeping in your uniform.
And then all of a
I'll
sudden,
stay ready.
can't nobody tell you what to do. All of a sudden, when they
1
change
week
something,
later.
you like, y'all can't do that.
Yeah.
What happened to the gratefulness and the humility and the thankfulness?
You got beat down by the job.
Yeah.
That's
Because you did not have the ability to process your emotions.
right.
Right? You lost sight of the original game plan. You can't, when the people was on the other side of the table and said, can you do this? Are you willing to do that? How do you handle this? You was like, yeah, I can do that. This and that. They could have told you anything.
Right.
You got to sweep the roof too. Like, yep, I'll do that.
Because you're thinking
I did that when I was a kid.
You're thinking
Right?
about your empty
Right.
bank account.
You're ready to make
Yeah,
things
my
happen or this
check.
new opportunity or whatever. But what the point that I'm making, what I want to come back to, is people lose sight of that as they get emotionally charged about things that don't even matter, right? So they stop performing, right? So the reason why companies will bring me in, there's a matrix called skill versus will. So you have 4 different type of folks in your workforce. Either they have low will and low skill, right? We don't even know how they really slip through the door.
Right.
Yeah.
They do. They do
Right.
slip.
Knew
They know somebody.
Low
Yeah,
will,
you know.
low skill, low will, right? Then we have those that have low skill but high will. Not
Yeah.
the best,
Yeah.
but show up every day with the energy, like,
But
Yeah.
to go get it.
Yes.
right? You happy to see them coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank God.
Yes.
This is why they bring me in, because of the workforce who has the high skill
Yeah.
but low will,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you can do the job and you're pretty good at
You're
it.
lazy.
But lately, right?
No, it's not
you know what I'm saying?
necessarily lazy though.
No,
Not
it's because we
necessarily.
got into it
Oh,
2 weeks ago, and we got to work together. And our job is to serve the public. But every time your energy come in the room, I
Yeah.
can't, because
Yeah, I
I'm
can't
irritated
function.
by whatever. You don't remember when we was little, they used to be like, use your words,
Yeah.
right? Your kid like, use your words. If
Yeah.
your son or grandson, young,
Yeah.
like, what do you want? Use
Yeah,
your
all
words.
that pouting.
Adults refuse to use their words sometimes, right? We're afraid to say, hey, that made me feel.
And
a
why?
certain
Why
kind of
is
way.
that? Because that's important. Like even in
Afraid of
relationship,
conflict.
like at the workplace, in relationships, at church, right? Any place humans gather, right? Like we do experience that really often. Like people will get almost like bottled up, right? And just go. So like, why is that? Why do people experience that feeling?
People don't like conflict, right?
Because they fear the response, or why?
I mean, I just don't think that. I don't know. It's going to be different for everyone because
Yeah.
some people like the smoke, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
It
they
makes
thrive
them,
on
it
it.
makes them feel relevant.
All the smoke.
And there's a body of people. Most people will avoid conflict,
Yes.
right? Because of number one, they don't know how to work through it. Conflict causes confliction within, right? right? Because it's conflicting and confusing, because back to what Kat said, they don't even realize that they're projecting something out. They don't even realize what belief is bucking against, or what value it's challenging, or what past experience was somebody told me or raised me to stand on. So it's easy for me to avoid it and not say anything, but much easier because now I'm about to go ahead and drop another DB. Right? So we've got the projection bias, right? When you project out to others, but then you turn around. And so I'm not fooling with you today, but this is my guy. So I'm going to come tell him everything that happened, right? Because he my guy. Yeah. So then what he going to do? Yeah. It's called confirmation bias.
Oh, yes.
Because he going to say, yeah, man, square over there, man. And so what happens now that my man it confirms how I feel.
That's right. That's right.
I must be right.
He's a yes man.
Right? Yeah. Or just not even a yes man, just side with his folks. Yeah. Right? He's not open to the perspective, because neither one of us are having the open-minded approach. Wow. But the nugget in there is, if he confirms it, or if I go to people when something happens in my life, if I only go to people who are more than likely going to ride with me, I miss an opportunity.
Yes.
Right? To learn something from that engagement. Because there's something to learn in the engagement at all. And I know this from working for like 16 years and being a high-level manager, being a compliance and standards supervisor, all that stuff. Yeah. Every situation that I had to resolve between coworkers, they could not even remember how it started.
Right. Wow.
Right. Because I would ask the simple question.
Wow.
Like, what happened?
Wow.
They don't remember the original thing. They can just go back to like this ongoing, Hatfield and McCoy feud they've been having. But they don't even know how it actually started. Wow. Right? Wow. And if we have enough time and we're able to unpack it, we always find out it's something so minor, right, that a simple conversation, right, would have been able to process it. Because a lot of folks, and I'll pause after this, because of our conditioning in most situations, or particular audience conditioning, we somehow think that conflict equals I don't like you, right? Somehow we disagree, even in this conversation. If I say something to rub somebody the wrong way, I could leave here and possibly somebody be like, I mean, he was cool, but even though I dropped some nuggets, but if I hit you the wrong way, somebody gonna be like, I mean, he's all right. I mean,
but that's an ego issue. That's an issue about ego and not right.
So
go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's take that back to the community, right? Mm-hmm. Because you grew up in the town. Mm-hmm. So how many times has certain blocks feuded with each other, right? Like you couldn't go to a certain side of the hood because it was beef, right? And now generations later, those feuds are still going. Some of those feuds are still going, right? And this generation doesn't even know why it started. Like how could we get to the root of those kind of things? How can we bring two neighborhoods together?
What a question.
Emotional maturity.
Yeah.
And
so what's the difference?
I'm going to break it down for you. Here's the thing about it. The law of intentionality is going to suggest that growth does not just happen. Your physical growth will, but your emotional maturity, right, is not going to just happen. You have to be intentional about it. So the difference is between emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is, basically identifying, knowing how you feel, and having skills to manage how you react to those feelings, and a couple other things. Emotional maturity is that growth in that space that even though I feel a certain kind of way about something, right? I feel it, right? There's people that I personally, the EI guy, want to smack right now. People. No, you guys are still good.
He's only known me for 4 minutes.
But what I'm saying is that, right? People think that emotional intelligence is about living this warm and fuzzy lifestyle. No. And no, what it is putting yourself at a level where you get really good at processing the things that come your way.
All the things.
So emotional maturity lets me identify how I'm feeling, and even if I don't like something, I'm able to understand that that's my issue and not the other person's issue. Because if it butts up against something I believe in, it is my responsibility to decide, is it time for me to update that part of my internal software, or am I good with it? Right? And then be responsible, though, how I react to whatever that thing is. So back to the neighborhood things, whoever we want to put in that category, who fits that category, they're not even in the space to understand you can be from over there.
Yeah.
But that does not mean, right, that we got to kill each other, steal from each other, rob from each other, want to cause harm to each other, or not even not like you just because you're from a different part of it. You know what I mean? Different set, so to speak.
Yeah.
And most folks are connected to those sets because we all want to be connected to something.
Yeah.
And so until you find value, and back to what we were talking about your own level of self-awareness, you and I were talking off camera about understanding your own worth and your value and being like honest about that, then you are easily influenced by anybody who can drop something off on. So you're getting like the wordplay with the internal software, you're getting information downloaded from everywhere and you just using it all, right? You ain't putting nothing in the recycle bin, right? You're just taking it all in. And so until you get to a point where you make one of those decisions that force you, right, to go ahead. You know how your phone sometimes, and I'll pause after this, you know how your phone sometimes will be hitting you up about that update, right? Yeah. And it'll be like, you want to update, and most people be later, right? Until when? Until eventually,
they
app don't work.
Something don't work. You got to do it.
Yes.
But that's what happens when people finally have an aha moment. Right, you've been needing to update the way you, what you believe, what you value, where you come from, how you're behaving, but you won't. And then something happens, and then you have to take a moment and plug yourself in and say, okay. And that's why we see people sometimes change, right? But then they go back to their default settings, right? Depending on how much pain they were caused, what their behavior is. And sometimes it's an ongoing thing. But at the end of the day, you know, bringing emotional intelligence to aware. My goal as the EI guy is just to raise awareness. And I'm thankful for platforms like this that allows me to reach areas that I may not be able to reach and be able to add value to what you guys are currently doing, because everything that we're doing collectively is very important. That's called collective intelligence, right? And so everything that we can do to empower the community by those that are ready to receive, right? Because we can't fight with those who are just simply not ready, right?
You gotta be open to making that change within yourself.
And that is kind of one of my next questions was: is it ever too late?
Before you get to me,
okay.
We
have a break.
That'll be the first question.
I have too many questions, y'all.
Man, outstanding. Well, while Kat gets that queued up, you're here with the Anything Can Happen show, KGPC 96.9 FM. You can find us streaming online, www.kgpc969.org. We're here with our amazing guest, DB Bedford. Stay tuned. We got a quick music break for y'all.
Yes, on them today, DB.
I can't believe we only have an hour. Daggone it. Will you be making a repeat visit to us sometime? Because we could go on and on.
When will it stop? Push your mind, I want push your mind to one of us top. I roll with the right soul, I won't let it ride. I roll with the right soul, I won't let it ride. No, I roll with the right soul, I won't let it ride. I roll with the right soul, I won't let it ride. No, you can rap right there, you don't bend. Covered by the blood, it's a whole thing. Everything you say, but you don't ring. First pay for the whole thing. You might like keep no stain. Can't go back, but we know where. Never sold out, but no game.
Anywhere on the field, that thing dropped.
You don't want to lie. I don't want to go with enemy life.
Oh, thank you. I like a t-shirt. I'm a t-shirt loving
Oh,
girl.
When will it stop? Pushing the line, I want pushing mine to one of us drop. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. No, I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. No. I'm so over the top, screaming out, gotta a pop. I say, these kids are bold with the rock, I gotta be born for my pops. They say, he's being religious again, and I really wish it would end. And I say, Jesus made me a bishop, and then if you don't like it, listen to them. This box not crack cocaine. If you apply the strap and you tap your vein, then you squeeze the syringe with the needle within. The hot thing, never let your brain. This how it takes past the pain. If you take one hit and this, it will blow your mind like you trying to bring in that Cobain. Light on the spot.
Before we get into your question, that was one question. We can go into
Pushing the line, I want pushing mine to one of us drop. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. No, I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. No.
Rock steady to rock, dividing my levies. Rock up on top, be leading Miami. Rock ain't gon' stop, couple of shots right now, but my faith don't drop. See the truth come through, pop the truck, reveal it in the roof. I am not the one, artillery the truth. No, hit it with the QQs, so I can't fit it with the fools. I struggled in my game, the night game. Even with it, the night hang over my aim. I ain't on the rock solid when I came. Stand strong when I'm weak, even in my game. Still in it, I'm still winning, I'm all in it. Growing it, evolve, carry the cross in it. Squad getting evolved, circle is God fearing. Rock be all I got, see why I rock with them.
I got a squad. You got up the tone, but what can you do when I got a god? Village and murder.
So I'll bring us back to the music break.
Pushing the
And then I'll
line, I
ask
want pushing mine to
one
one of
question
us
and then
drop.
go beat Kenya,
I roll with the
beat
rap,
Kenya, and then you finish it with that last question.
I roll with the
Business
rap,
question.
so I won't let it ride. No, I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride. I roll with the rap, so I won't let it ride.
7 seconds. You're listening to the Anything Can Happen show on KGPC 96.9 FM Oakland and streaming online at www.kgpc969.org. Woo! So that was Dayton, and that song was The Rock. All right, man. If y'all haven't been listening already, we have brother DB from Emotional Intelligence in the building. Dropping crazy nuggets. Y'all got to go back and listen to the first half.
They will.
But DB, I have a question for you, right? Because just like we talked off air, this show was inspired by Heal the Hood, right? This show, the Anything Can Happen show. I was inspired to do this show, and then Brother Kwesi and me linked up, and then me, Kwesi, and Kenya linked up, and we continue to grow and bring people like yourself that's in the community, right? That educate the community, coach the community, and have all these amazing skills. So I'm going to ask you this question. Right now, in this day and age, as a coach, what do you think is one thing that our inner city communities need when it comes to emotional intelligence? Like, how can they start making that shift like you made it? Because you weren't always like this. You grew up in the streets and you got to this point in your life after, so many different experiences. But for that young brother or sister, just anybody that's listening out there, how did you find yourself getting into this space? And what maybe routines that you practice each and every day help you consistently be the person that you are today?
So, as you're asking me that, as you're talking, I'm thinking about where I come from and when I started to make the change. And I used to actually really think that this was like BS, or cliche when people used to say this to me. But folks, no matter where you are right now in your life, and I know this is going to sound very difficult, but you have to believe in yourself. right? And when people used to say that to me, I used to be like, yeah, that's fine, but like I'm hungry, right?
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Or I got this. But when I started to believe in myself, and when I started to believe that I was bigger than the situation that I was in at the time, I started taking quantum leaps in my life, right? And
What allowed you to believe?
allowing other people to believe in me. So I was in a situation, my turning point in life, like you said, I haven't always been emotionally intelligent. Actually, in fact, the pivot point in my life, I actually lost my temper to the point where I tried to take somebody's life over something super, super, super stupid, like super stupid. And I ended up in jail behind it. And it was in that moment, I didn't know that I would be using this as a platform later on. But while I was in jail fighting this case, there came a time where I was like, man, like damn, I didn't really have to do that.
Damn.
I was thinking to myself, like, I ain't do that. And I know it sounded a little silly because somebody on the outside would be like, yeah, of course, duh. But what I learned in that moment is that, and this is something that is another nugget, right, that I tell people, it's a formula. When emotions are high, logic is low.
Yeah. Can you say that one more time for our viewers?
When emotions are high, logic is low. The higher the emotion in any situation, the lower the logic is going to be. And so when I go back and think about that situation, I think about like in the moment when I seen that dude and I had told myself that when I see him again, I'm going to do this. I was emotionally charged. So all the logical options were thrown out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it cost me a heavy consequence. And so I started, when you talk about like what was the change, as I started something like to call reverse engineering, as I started reverse engineering all the plays of my life, I started being honest about when I made decisions that wasn't in my best interest. What was my state? Like, what was I doing? What was I feeling? And most of the time I was in my feelings, right? And I was mad about something or whatever. And I would take it out, right, on this particular person, situation, and sometimes on myself.
Right.
What allowed me to believe in myself, the judge in that particular case, he was able to see something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And he gave me an opportunity, right, to operate from a different space. Because even though I was heavy in the streets and doing a lot of stuff, I also come from a time in the era where I was always taught that the game was stepping stone. You were supposed to get in and get out. I know a lot of folks forgot that along the way, but I didn't. So I always created, like I started the clothing line back in 1995. I had a cigarette shop on the corner store in Brookfield. I had a carpet cleaning business. Like I always had something trying to get my way out the streets. And the judge recognized for me to be 22, 23, to have these businesses, but most importantly, what he recognized is that every time I came to court, I had a lot of people who came to court to support me, which was something he wasn't seeing on a regular basis. So what he said to me is that, man, you got a superpower. Like you have a different level of energy and you don't even realize that you're using it for evil instead of good. And he was willing, if I was willing, to give me an opportunity to see the light, if I would just use my power for good instead of evil. So back to what you said, Kat. So I started to believe in myself that I could be even better than what I was doing if I just zoned in and started tapping into all the stuff that I had learned and sharing it with others, which is what he was encouraging me to do.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's just been, uphill from there. And so back to those who are in the dark spaces, those who are struggling, those who are like that sound good, but it's like you have to decide, right? Are you going to be better than you are in the near future, right? You have to visualize your future self. I know I struggled with that because I didn't think I was going to live for a long period of time, right? Coming up, I started selling dope in 86, right? Ooh. 87. Ooh. So
that's when it was
straight through the mid 90s.
Wow.
So I didn't think I was going to live, right? Because
I
didn't. A lot of my partners around me wasn't living or going to jail. So a future self. If you talk about my future, you talking about 5 years. I'm talking about what's up in the next 5 minutes. So I have to challenge those who may feel that same way. You might be right. You might not make it. But what if you do?
What if you do?
Because that's what I found along
Wow.
the way, because I'm still here. So in my 30s, I was still trying to correct all the stuff I did in my 20s. And I could have been much further had I listened.
That's
right?
the conversation
And
I
tapped in.
have with my clients about nutrition.
Yeah, that's fact. Right?
So
You know,
I want to. This is incredibly important to me right now because one of my clients is going into a program at 3:00 today. One of my former clients, who's like one of my kids, and I had a long conversation with her this morning, where she was saying it doesn't matter if she makes it, doesn't matter, nothing matters. She's got 4 children. And nothing matters. She's had a horrible lot of times. But I've been retired from that job for 5 years, but I stay in very close contact with my kids. I love my kids. I don't care if you're 25, girl, you're still my kid. Right. And so for you to say that was exactly kind of what I was trying to tell her this morning, but I like you have a better way, obviously, of saying it. And so I took a video of you saying that so I can send it to her before she goes into.
Wow. And I will say this to her,
today.
and I appreciate that. And I also say to the young lady, just remember that, you survived 100% of the things you've been through.
Ooh,
That's hard.
Say that.
And you should consider, right, what life, because see, when we give up and we give up hope or whatever, right, we don't realize that we're being selfish. But what is life going to actually be like for your children?
Oh, man.
If you do give up.
Oh, man.
Right? And if you can sit with that for a second, you will find the motivation to push through, because it's definitely not where you start.
Wow.
And if you need examples, all you have to do is pick anybody that she just even remotely thinks is successful and go to their backstory. Because sometimes you can't, it's hard to see the picture when you're sitting inside the frame.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be able to take a new perspective. You got to remember that it's never too late. Colonel Sanders didn't get started till the 60s, right? It was like
I didn't even know
right? That. It's like you can start anywhere. And so if there's any drop of hope left, remember, number one, give yourself some credit, because no matter what you've been through, you're still here. You survived it, no matter where you at. And if you're going into a program, that means you still got something in you. And if you don't believe, like I tell you, you got to believe in yourself. If you don't believe that it's possible for you, just pick anybody that you admire, anybody who you think got it all together, and then unpack their past. And I'm almost willing to bet that you're going to see places in their life where they didn't think they would make it either. Absolutely. Right. And if I had enough time, I'd unpack some, some deep stuff for myself to make you realize that, man, anybody can move forward. Because I definitely didn't know that I would be sitting here these days doing the work that I'm doing and leading. I went from being, and I'm going to get out the way with this, I went from being a 4-time felon. I was a 4-time felon. Okay. Let's just pause right there. And then I didn't know this was even possible. Ended up getting my record expunged and ended up going back and working at the same probation department where I was locked up at. Now, if you had asked me in my heyday about working as a probation officer, as a peace officer, I probably would have punched you in the face. I never would have seen that coming.
Ain't gonna be no snitch.
And when you catch a felony, you think that's a wrap.
Wow.
I just want to put that in perspective.
Yes.
I have 4 of them.
Wow.
And they all got expunged. And I ended up going back and working for the probation board and worked here for 16 years. Ended up promoted to one of the highest ranking managers in that department, the part that I was at. Worked with people who was there when I was locked up and became everybody's supervisor.
Wow.
And I'm not putting it on thick.
Wow.
And you can background check me. You can ask anybody. This story is one. Eventually, I'm going to do a documentary on it. But and talk about for the young lady you're talking about, belief, everything is possible. And then I retired from there, took an early retirement. I've been off the clock 5 years.
Nice.
And all I do is this work right here.
Yeah.
Because I believe that I am the one to do it.
Yeah.
So we don't need anybody else to validate us. We got to get past that.
Yes.
And how do you get there? Last thing for her is just focus. And that's what he was talking about earlier. Just focus on today, right? Because anxiety comes from worrying about things that ain't happened yet. And depression is going to come from holding on to things that's already happened.
Wow.
Come on.
Okay.
Woo,
All right.
Lord.
We're going to let that breathe for a second.
For real.
So-
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's all
This
good.
means a lot
Thanks.
to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to her. So
Sure.
Yeah, you dropped some game, man, and we're gonna bring it a little more to the ground because obviously you have an incredible life story that you shared just a little bit with us, but you turned that life story into something golden, right? And you've been able to do that and impact others through or help them prevent what you went through, right? Without having this information. So just looking at how you transition this information, this knowledge, this wisdom to actual business, right? Where did that come from on a foundational level?
Kind of came from, the streets, like kind of the mindset, everything ain't bad from the streets. Let me just put that
Oh,
out
not at
there.
all.
Like I learned a lot of good stuff in the streets.
Man,
right?
we got a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
in the streets.
entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
courage, relentless, all that stuff. There's a lot of characteristics that does come from the streets, but I think it really came from me learning about emotional illness. So I was working for the Alameda County Probation Department. I was a compliance and standards supervisor, and I was in a training that was unrelated to emotional intelligence, but the guy who was doing the training mentioned emotional intelligence. As soon as I heard it, I was like, that's dope. I never heard that. So I made a note to myself, I gotta look this up later. And then I started researching it. I'm like, this is interesting. So I started asking people, like from the block to the boardroom, have you heard of emotional intelligence? And nobody had ever heard of it. And if they did, they couldn't really articulate it. So I'm like, so I did some research and I'm like, and then there's no cultural representation of it at the time that I'm doing my research.
And that's huge.
So I'm like, all my people emotional. I'm like, why are we even talking about this? So I start feeling like, and when I said they come back from the streets, like I always was a little baby pioneer in the street. I was always the first one to kind of do this or do that. And so I started realizing that I'm like, I could get in front of this if I just take a deep dive and learn it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. So I just I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I decided that in that moment that I was going to be the EI guy. I was going to be the guy for the culture. I was going to be the guy that people heard about emotional intelligence because I exist. And I doubled down on myself. I read everything there is about it. I watched every YouTube video, watched every book, looked at every situation from that point forward through the lens of emotional intelligence, start checking myself, and made myself who I am today. Prior to this, I'm just about 7 years now. I started to write the first book in 2015. But prior to the EI guy, I was the probation guy. Like if you had any issue at juvenile hall, you called me, right? Or I was the guy that people went to because I turned my life around. So if they wanted someone to be encouraged, they would reach out to me. And prior to that, I did work with Youth Alive. I was doing violence intervention work, right? Then prior to that, I was in the streets. I was a weed man. I was a shirt guy from Brookfield, the Flatline. So every phase of my life, what I'm basically unpacking is that you keep evolving, right? And you keep updating your internal software so that you're always operating on the latest and best version of yourself. That might have been a long answer to a short.
That's exactly what we needed to hear.
So specifically, because one of the main purposes of Anything Can Happen show is to inspire dreamers, right? To inspire people who have a vision for their life but may not know how to bring it to fruition, right? So you definitely answered at least half of that question. The other half is from a financial perspective, right? Like, how did you come up with the funds in order to make this an actual business where you can go out and impact people's lives?
That was just Charlie Hustle right there. That's just, from selling shirts and listening to what people wanted and buying the shirts that they wanted to wear, not what I thought they wanted to wear. Right. When it comes to being compensated for the work that I do, people will move for a couple of reasons.
Right.
If you can move them from pain to pleasure, they'll pay you. If you can save them time and effort, they'll pay you. If you can help them make more money, they'll pay you.
Right.
Or if you can increase their status, if you can make them look good or feel better, they'll pay you. So from a business standpoint, if whatever you're doing, keep that in mind. If you can move people from pain to pleasure, right, solve their problem from pain to pleasure, they will pay you. If you can save them time and effort, right, give them a faster way to do something, they'll pay you. If you can help them make more money, obviously they'll pay you.
Right.
Or if you can make them look good or feel good. When people wear designer stuff or buy foreign whips, it's because it makes them feel good, right? They don't really, most people don't buy for themselves. They buy for that moment when you go outside and go, that's a nice car. That's the moment. That's what I paid for right there, right?
This is it.
So anyone who is striving to be an entrepreneur or do business in any standpoint, make sure that you are touching those points right there, and that you focus on whatever problem that you're solving. So my business solves a problem in the workplace, because when workplace conflict comes up, it becomes problematic, right? Things are not flowing. So whoever's responsible for that group of individuals, look for someone like myself to try to give the workforce a different perspective. So that's the problem that I'm solving. On an individual level, if someone is struggling in their life, in their personal relationships, romantic or parental or otherwise, and they realize that it's their emotions that's causing them the problem, then they're like, this guy, right? Somebody told me about this guy, and they come to me, and then I provide them with a book or an online course or a coaching session, things of that nature. So my company solves a problem. We don't have to argue if you ever get emotional about things. No one will argue that. The problem is people don't understand what to do with that emotion, right? They get stuck. So you look for someone to put some light in their blind spots, and that's how I'm able to move the needle in what I am doing. So that's how I would say to anybody trying to come up.
Goodness gracious, my brain got stretch marks on it. Great information. But we're gonna have to wrap this thing up. Do we got time for one more question?
Tell us. We got the book.
Okay, we got the talk to us about the book, right?
Yes.
Oh, so this book right here is 30 Days to Emotional Wellness. It's like a quick little life hack. You know what I mean? It's a blueprint, it's a book that each chapter just is 2 or 3 pages. Right? So don't tell me you don't have time. Right? It's for you to pick up real quick, get a nugget. Right? It's a place for you to write down your thoughts, and you can put it down, come back the next day, or you can just randomly open it and just find you that moment. Because a lot of times the first thing people will, when they do hit me, it's like they want to tell me their situation, and they want to give me variables. What about this, or what if it's that, or whatever. And I'm just gonna draw from the book, right? I'm gonna give you, because most of the time we know what to do.
Right.
But the thing, so in marketing, they say a confused mind will always say no.
Right.
I've had too many choices, whatever. I was like, no.
Yes.
So sometimes we do that with ourselves, right? Like if I can't really conjure up the solution, then I just get tight. I just be like, you know what I mean? And then that inner child we talk about, you know what I mean? Be stubborn, throw a little temper tantrum towards whatever the situation is. And so I'm trying to give people an opportunity, right, to not strain the relationships around them, not make decisions that don't best suit them, because you and your feelings. Like when it all boils down to people being their feelings. You can watch anything. I challenge anybody who ever see this, no matter when you see this, the next time you see something out of pocket, next time you see an incident, I want you to just think about what was they feeling at that time. And we can put that in.
The person you're seeing, what are they feeling?
Somebody have a fight, somebody have a road rage, the thing we just seen happen with the school shooting. That guy had a feeling. When you wake up in the morning, something was driving him. And because he was unable to process it, right, he probably did what he only knew. Because what you don't know, you don't know.
That's right.
Right? And so, and of course, obviously, I'm not advocating for him, because I don't agree with that by far. But there's always a source. Something's on, and it's usually rooted in how we feel. It's usually rooted in our emotion, which is why I think this is just a conversation that we cannot ignore. We have to keep lit. And again, I gotta thank you guys again for amplifying the conversation by allowing it to be on your platform. Because it does. I just get up every day. I try to get one person to tap into emotional intelligence. So I always got books on it. That's why I'm always open for the conversation, because I feel like I can't wait till they actually go viral. right?
Oh,
I ain't been able to go viral yet.
That's right now.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
I'm trying to go viral. Right? I want to get to
Yes.
10 million views.
Yes.
It's, you know, I don't know how to dance on TikTok. You know what I'm saying?
Not yet.
But
Not yet.
how do I get the masses to just tap in, right? To
That's
just
the question.
take
right
this under
there.
consideration so they could vibrate at their higher frequency, so that, because I have a level of personal freedom that's out of this world. Like, I get through the day literally unbothered. You know what I mean? Things happen, I process it, and I move on. And people struggle with that, but that's where emotional intelligence come in. That's why this work is important.
Yeah, we gotta, man. We keep you here for another hour. We gotta wrap this thing
Shut
up.
another
Thank
hour.
you for being here.
Thank you
Kiki.
so
So,
much.
This has been incredible. For those of y'all who are tuned in at ach.show on Instagram, thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. Make sure you like, comment, follow, subscribe. For everybody else, you can catch the broadcast at KGPC 96.9 FM or streaming online www.kgpc969.org. You've just listened to another incredible episode of the Anything Can Happen show. Stay tuned. We got more.
Peace.
Hey, wonderful.
Yeah.
See the approach that you took, because we just planted so many seeds.
This is for me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Man,
thank you.
who said it wasn't a Black Santa Claus?
I'm saying. Fairly original sounding.
Next time we can talk about the, because I was going to define it, because I also teach people how to day trade. But it uses emotional